I call to order the regular school board meeting for January 22nd, 2019 for Roseville Area Schools. Roll call, please.
Director Azer.
Here.
Director Goggins.
Here.
Director Johnson. Here. Director Anderson. Here. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Are there any agenda adjustments this evening, Dr.
There are
Spaulding?
no agenda adjustments.
Okay. We are very fortunate this evening to have an announcement. We have Dr. Alicia Mobley, who will be introducing the new Assistant Director of Student Services.
Hello. Hi. I'm Dr. Mobley, and it's a pleasure to introduce you to our new Assistant Director of Student Services, Jennifer Drummond. She comes to us with a wealth of experience, so much so that I had to write it all down and bring it up here. It includes experience at the hospital setting, all the way to therapeutic day school, a brief tenure in Chicago Public Schools, an instructional coach as well, and her most recent position was the Equity and Curriculum Instruction Director at 916. So a wealth of experience, coordinator at 916. Wealth of experience. We are so happy to have her on board, and I wanted to introduce her to all of you.
Hello, I'm very excited, and I've hit the ground running, and I've met a ton of people already, including some parents, so no one is treating me like I just started 6 days ago.
Yes, this is her sixth day, for sure. So we're so happy to have her on board. Thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you for joining.
So I'm on the 916 school board, and they were not.
They were
not very happy with our school district because we got you. So I just wanted to give you that compliment.
Thank you.
I've heard that several times
Yep.
as well.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Do we have any community input this evening? Okay, we move to the consent agenda. Do I have a motion for the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. That moves us to reports and non-action items. The first we have this evening is a safety and security update. And we have a host of different people coming up to help with this project. And I'm sorry, before we do that, you know what? We did not read our gifts and acknowledge our wonderful gifts to schools.
Okay, I figured you were gonna do that. All right.
Nope, I unintentionally skipped that. So forgive me for a moment, we have to back up. I omitted something.
No problem. So I'd like to thank the Brimhall PTA for a financial gift to Brimhall Elementary School, a gift of school supplies to Brimhall Elementary from Office Depot, Kyle Callahan, a gift of dock cam and flexible seating, okay, from donorschoose.org to Central Park. A gift of Legos, circuit kits, Kinects, Mega Tiles, I like those, and a coding game, also from Donors Choose to Central Park Elementary. A gift of gift cards from Roseville Lutheran Church to Central Park Elementary. Financial gift from Minnesota Historical Society to Edgerton Elementary. A financial gift from Boston Scientific, Your Cause, LLC, to Fairview Alternative High School. Another financial gift from Box Tops for Education to Parkview Center School. A financial gift from Your Cause, trustee for TIA services to Parkville Center School. Financial gifts to Roseville Area High School from the Roseville Girls Basketball Booster Club and the Roseville Area High School Dance Booster Club. An anonymous financial gift to Roseville Area Middle School, and a financial gift to Roseville Area Schools from the Church of St. John the Evangelist.
Well, thank you, and thank you again once to our generous community for all the support they provide our schools and our children, our future. Okay, now we're ready for the safety and security update. Sorry for the delay there. Dr. Lake, would you like to start?
I would. Thank you for having us. This is a second iteration of the safety and security update. We joined you last year following the Parkland school shooting, and this may be a yearly event, so we do want to keep you abreast of the changes. Sherry Thompson and I co-chair this team, so we've reestablished, refreshed our district safety and security team. Our general purpose of the team is to create greater alignment and support for site-based school safety. Our membership is quite expansive. We have 20 members. Of course, it rotates a bit who can join us at the meeting, but we have non-licensed, licensed staff, representatives from partnering agencies. Again, a really strong partnership with Roseville Police Department. I know that you're familiar with Officer Jones and her incredible work. And we meet 5 times per year. We also seek input from families and parents as well. We had 4 large goals. By the end of the year, we will have instituted an anonymous reporting system for grades 7 through 12. We will have established reunification plans for every single site, and to familiarize us, that's if a crisis occurs, for example, at Little Canada Elementary, the students are bused to a different site so it's parent to student reunification. So that's what that means. We will have staff training, complete run, hide, fight training for all staff in Roseville schools, and student training for students in grades 9 through 12. Again, developmentally appropriate. And then that really to introduce Officer Jones in terms of partnering and taking guidance from law enforcement in all regards.
So the Roseville Police Department has kind of put our recommendations and our guidance into a variety of different pieces of safety and security. Everything from the reunification sites and how that process should work to the training for staff and students. And one thing that we have worked on most recently is law enforcement, our agency, and it sounds like the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office, which has a school resource officer at the middle school, is kind of doing the opposite as well. We are becoming familiar with the buildings by hosting training at those different sites. So the Roseville Area High School was the host for a Roseville Police Department training in the fall. And it sounds like the Ramsey County Sheriff's Office is going to use the middle school in the upcoming future. So we've kind of worked both ways to make sure that our partnership isn't just a one-way street, it's a two-way street, so that if something were to happen or if we're utilized for a safety and security purpose, that we're both familiar with each other and the cooperation that we have with one another.
And also in regards to training and specific recommendations, those are always based in law enforcement recommendations through Officer Jones and through Ramsey County.
Yes, there's been obviously a lot of training that's come out, not only for school buildings, but also for police departments to deal with the variety of incidents that happen at schools. I've been a part of a lot of those. My supervisors have been a part of a lot of those. And so the training or the guidance recommendations that we provide to the school, either at the individual school level or at the district level, comes based off of best practices that are from these trainings or surrounding schools who have had incidents that we can base our response off of. So everything is based in research that's been done or previous experience that's been done by actual law enforcement agencies in partnership with schools.
Which is nice too, because you'll have, when there's a large incident, you'll have convening agencies from all throughout Ramsey County and the metro area providing support in the same incident. So,
Yes, absolutely.
okay. I'd like to thank Principal Bolgenholm for being with us to provide some site leadership.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this work, and the work that the committee is doing, I think, is fantastic work. It's really important and really necessary. We have building-based emergency response teams that meet monthly to review drills or plan drills and review practices and procedures. One of the things that I'm excited about with this committee is that we are creating some commonality, common language, common practice, consistency and continuity throughout the district, which has been, I think, really positive because even if we at a building are consistent in our communication, we realize that we are working, if there's ever an incident, with outside agencies as well. And so it's really important for us to all get on the same page. And so that consistency in terminology and planning and expectations has really helped prepare us and take our site-based emergency response team really to the next level.
Thank you. In terms of the physical improvements,
Yes, one of the final pieces of the plan, and you're all quite aware of this from the construction discussions that we've been having, even going back pre-referendum. One of the big features for our students and for our staff, for the community as a whole, was creating consistent, safe, and secure entrances at all of our sites. So with the bond projects that are underway, and we also were fortunate enough to receive the MDE grant for Brimhall, we are able to provide the double entry, safe and secure entrances at all of our facilities, because that has been, regardless of our practices, that physical restriction has been a barrier for all of our sites. So we are in the process of ensuring that all sites have the safe and secure entrances. Also, as part of the grant, and then also we received some Safe Schools money on an annual basis through the levy process, and through our long-term facility maintenance projects, we will be making some technology improvements too, updating even some of our cameras, making those web-based. We've actually started that a couple of years ago, and improving accessibility and the efficiency in that, whether it be our keying system or other entry systems that we have in our buildings. So that's also providing improvements to the physical facility. The other item that we're looking at, or that we're able to do through the bond funds, is improving traffic flow at the sites where possible. One of the examples, of course, is from a safety standpoint, is Brimhall, with adding that additional bus lane or separate bus lane on the other side of the building. In that case, we're talking about traffic flow as far as safety feature. And also for our pedestrians, for the kids that are walking through the parking lot. So wherever we're able to improve traffic flow, we're doing that as well. And then lastly, I would say, as far as physical improvements, keeping these building safety plans updated throughout the construction process, not only during the process, especially when you look at, well, Garen's going through it right now at Little Canada, with the addition, and then also as remodeling occurs. And we're seeing it on a grander scale, of course, at the high school with the phasing of the projects. So making sure that we adapt throughout the construction process, and once construction is completed, to update all of those plans to align so that they work in the updated facilities.
That's our presentation.
Got a couple. Thank you very much for the presentation. Just a couple quick questions. This Safety and Security Committee, is it the same as like the district's emergency response team? Is that what you're kind of considered? The district has a district-wide emergency
Well, this
response
is our
team, right?
refreshed, reestablished team,
Okay.
so this does cover the district.
Does
And we
cover,
have
okay.
representatives, licensed, non-licensed, principal leadership, buildings and grounds, police department. So,
Okay. And then a question from Officer Jones. I know that active shooter drill happened at the high school, and I'm sure you can't say too much about it, but I'm assuming, my assumption is that you're more prepared, confident today than you were yesterday. But is there anything that can be shared about results, or, like does the high school staff know what happened? I mean, is there just a feeling of, what kind of went down, and there's kind of a better feeling of, not that there was a bad feeling before, I'm saying, just, anything about the results or anything that can be shared about that?
Sure, yeah, and no part of that training is in any way a secret. One thing that I thought was really beneficial for us is that we actually opened up. When you do these types of trainings, it's very helpful to have real life actors to be role players, and role players provide that emotional response, that physical response to a traumatic event that the officers don't usually have during some of our trainings when we don't have those types of role players available. And so one really cool thing was that we offered it actually up to the Roseville High School staff, and then kind of beyond into the district level, for people to come and be role players for that. And that was really unique for our officers. As I said, that emotional and physical response of a true victim in something. Usually we have police officers that will play the victims in other training scenarios, and they don't provide that same emotional response, because they're thinking about what they're going to do in their own head the next time that they have to be the officer. And so that was really beneficial to try and not only work around those people, but to consider their safety, consider their emotional health, to know that someone that's in a true crisis maybe isn't going to follow your directions to stand up and move with you because they're going to be terrified. And so that provided that kind of complexity to actually have those types of people role play for us. And then a second way that it became very beneficial was that I'm pretty sure that every one of our 48 officers has been in the Roseville Area High School, but not all of them have seen the complexities of the actual physical building. It's a large building, and there's a lot of different kind of passageways. And one story I'll quick share is that we had a scenario in which there was the bad guy had been running around, and I happened to know a shortcut because I work there every day. And so they were a little confounded because I showed up right in front of them and arrested the bad guy, and everybody else was kind of chasing after him. It was just a mouse game. So just to be able to get officers into that space so that they can see the different logistical challenges, or I guess the different law enforcement challenges of being able to maneuver through a building safely was extremely, extremely helpful for our agency.
Thank you.
The one question that I had, and it's great to have all these things that are being done, but it kind of goes along with that idea that a lot of the students can be very traumatized by even the drills. The fact that we have little kids cowering in a corner in the dark, and even if they're little kids being 16. So the one thing I thought that was maybe, I don't want to say missing because that sounds more rude than I mean it to, but is that we do have counseling and people to talk to our students and our teachers, because you can be prepared as all get out, but when it's your kids, your students, it changes a little bit. So just maybe that's an angle to consider, and our administrators too. We never had to do this when we were kids. It's so gross. It's terrible.
We actually spent a lot of time at the elementary talking about that because we're required by state law to do 5 lockdown drills a year.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that for some students with anxiety or other fears, that even a drill could be stress-provoking. And so we spent a lot of time in class talking about drills and why we do drills and how we do drills, and have I think a pretty well-established process to help mitigate some of those concerns.
Yeah. Anecdotally, in my classroom, there's kids that dread it.
Mm-hmm.
Tears, dread it. Sick to the stomach. So something to consider.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And for the public to know that that happens.
Mm-hmm.
And then make something change. The end. I'm done.
Well, thank you very much for the update. I appreciate all your work to try to keep our students safe and secure, as well as trying to balance the emotional trauma of having to think about that, which is really a challenge for the students, for some students, many maybe. Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Lake, Dr. Mobley, Christina Robertson, and Jake Vondelendy are now up to talk about our program participation report.
Oh, sure.
It was getting under the desk for atomic. We had to do that.
Like a desk was going to stop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Desk and cover?
Yeah, duck and cover.
No, I'm talking for it. I don't think it was 5 times a year though.
Well, thank you for having us. Sorry, we're still getting a little bit set up here. Dr. Mobley will be joining us shortly. But I'm Jake Bondolindi, and have a team of folks that are with us tonight to do the program participation report. So maybe we could just go around and introduce ourselves just briefly.
Debbie Light, Director of Secondary Ed.
Tyrone Brookins, Principal, Roseberry Middle School.
Jen Mickelson-Bew, I'm the Title I Coordinator at Roseberry Middle School.
And as I said, Dr. Mobley, our Director of Student Services, will be joining us as well. I'm going to start us off, and we have multiple different parts to our presentation tonight, so we have different presenters that will be doing different slides, and we'll be walking you through those. We have information about a gifted and talented program, advanced options at the middle level, activities and athletics, special education, English learners, and our academies at RAMS. We're going to start off with our gifted and talented information. And so this information, this data represents students who have been formally identified as gifted in grades 3 through 12. Students in grades K through 2 are considered informally identified as gifted. A proportionate amount, when you see the numbers on the next page, is considered a 1.0, which is proportionate. Students of color, English learners, students who receive free or reduced price meals, and students who receive special education services are all underrepresented, while our white students are overrepresented by a little over 1.5 times. We find that we continue to under-identify Black, Hispanic, EL, free and reduced price students who qualify for free and reduced price meals, and special education students in our gifted and talented program. This year we have changed our identification process to include local norms as well as national norms, and we believe this will have an increased impact on the student groups who have been historically underserved or underrepresented as well. In our
Could you
gifted and
comment
talented program.
what that means for what's changed?
Yes. So we're looking at actually continuing our national norms, but also having those local norms, which means that some of our student groups that have, so say our students of color groups, you can go to the next slide, actually would be helpful. So you can see that we have our American Indian, Asian, Hispanic, Black students who have been historically underrepresented within our data. We're actually looking at within those populations where our local norms would say what are the scores that we'd be looking at that would reach these the populations as well. And I could talk a little bit more about that with bring back some of our information with our gifted and talented program coordinator Trina Hira, which we would love to do later on this spring if possible as well. But it's actually looking at a recommendation that the Minnesota Department of Education has, as well as looking at some of our local norming to identify those historically underrepresented populations. So.
Yeah, it seems to me, looking at that whatever we're using is just distinguishing race.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So why use it?
Yeah.
Seems like something else.
That's why we've changed it up.
Okay, good.
Yeah. Looking at our advanced options, we've had our advanced options in the next over the past 2 years, and we have some data for you tonight that provides students in grades 7th and 8th that took at least one and completed at least one advanced option. So when you're looking at the data on the next slide, that's students who had completed at least one. And you'll see that approximately 71% of our whole student population in that 7th and 8th grade completed at least one advanced option. And we found that that's up from 51% from the previous year. So excited to see that more participation. And of those students, 45% completed one or two advanced options, while about more than 55% completed 3 or more advanced options throughout the school year. We see that white students are slightly overrepresented, while students of color were slightly underrepresented. However, there's a lot of variation within those student groups of color, as you'll see on the next slide. White students and students of color averaged about 4 advanced options completed across the year, so about the same. And then we found our EL and special ed student participation was lower compared to our other demographic groups. And as I talked with this information with Christina Robertson, our EL director, talked that attempting some of the mainstream level assignments serves as an advanced option for many of our EL students. So the next slide shows the representation of both of those years. The blue is that 16-17 school year, and the red is the 17-18 school year. So you're looking at two comparison years, and that's why the different bars there. But again, looking at that 1.0 as the proportionate amount, and it's comparing those 2 years for those student groups. We did add free and reduced price lunch, special education, and gifted and talented as other student groups that we would be evaluating. And so they show up for this year, and they'll continue to show up in subsequent years, but added a new addition this year as the board requested that last year.
The activities and athletics information is very straightforward. This is information in regards to students in grades 7 through 12. As discussed last year, we have the 4 categories of participation: academic groups, such as future problem solvers; athletics, of course, clubs, such as ultimate frisbee; and fine arts, such as all of our music groups. I do have a hard copy here, too. Our students of color participate at a rate of 45%, and the general demographic for grades 7 through 12 is 53%. I'm excited to share that on March 12th, Roz AD Reed Hornick will be here to describe his vision in relationship to Roz activities programming, in relationship to the partnership that the High School League has with Roz, and then also his aim to continue to recruit and retain our students of color and ensure that our activities are relevant to the lives of our students. So that's very exciting. You can see a fairly balanced pie chart of our activities that we do offer in terms of academics, athletics, clubs, and fine arts. And then here's our work to ensure participation from all groups of students. If there's one data point that I could pull out, I'd note the slight decline in participation from our Hispanic students. So
Yeah,
that's
gosh,
an area we
that
pay
jumped off the
attention
page at me. What's
the driver?
Well, think about what's happened in the past 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised if that wouldn't be
Yeah, okay.
messing with some morale a little bit.
And certainly barriers we need to pay attention to, in addition to ensuring that we're offering culturally relevant clubs and activities.
Good, thank you.
So initial referrals, we review them annually to look at the data for possible overrepresentation. And if you look at the next slide, I'll talk as I summarize. There are a couple of things we see here. There is an overrepresentation of our Hispanic, Black, and white scholars. Let me rephrase that. So over a 5-year period, there's been a consistent overrepresentation for our African American scholars. Our American Indian, Hispanic, and Black scholars were overrepresented in the 2017 and 2018 school year. There's a downward reflecting trend for our white and Asian scholars. One of the other things that happens with our special ed referrals is we have a principal one-pager, and the principal one-pager consists of the initial referrals to special education. Now, this doesn't include our scholars who receive special ed services, just the initial referrals. And so we added this data, and the rationale behind adding this data and updating it every trimester is making sure that we're asking the question, what does it look like at each site? And then we can further dig deeper down for race and ethnicity as well. Now, for the second slide, and this is the participation of scholars actually served in special education. So there's a referral, but not everyone qualifies for services. And there are some situations where parents go through the process, or guardians, and then opt to not have special education services provided as well. And a couple of other factors. But there is an overrepresentation of Hispanic, Black, and white scholars in this category. and a downward reflecting trend for all other groups. The last bullet point, if I could bring it to your attention, there's a increase for our Black scholars. And so we're trying to figure out, what does that mean? What are the areas? And we're seeing some trends in early childhood. We're seeing some trends at the earlier elementary grades as well. And then the new data that you'll see here for this piece is we also added our EL scholars to the grade. That's new. So we want to make sure that our scholars receiving special ed services and EL services are also represented. And we're looking at the data that reflects their needs as well. I also am going to present the EL information today as well. I've been given a dearth of information from Christina. So these are the 5 top languages spoken in the EL program. And of those, Spanish, Hmong, Karen, Somali, and Nepali. If you go to the next slide, enrollment at our sites with high immigrant numbers has declined but stayed steady. It's declined a bit but stayed steady at other sites. There's a high exiting rate at 5th grade right now in the district, and also in 4th grade as well. So this slide speaks to itself in terms of enrollment and as it's disaggregated. So the definition of our SLIFE scholars includes scholars who have entered the country in U.S. schools at 7th grade or beyond, earn at least 2 years below grade level in academic and English skills.
Can you remind me what SLIFE means again?
Mm-hmm. So,
I think they have, there's students who have had a significant life event that has interrupted their education.
Okay.
I can't remember what exactly the...
What is it, where they plateau? The students plateau?
No, it's for typically like refugee students.
Okay,
So they've
okay.
had some kind of life event that has prevented them from being in school.
Okay, thank you.
So her note here is that for that last slide, with fewer immigrants allowed to enter the country, we anticipate fewer SLIFE students in our program. So just be it there.
Okay. Thank you.
For this next slide, we have a lot of acronyms, don't we? For our next slide, our LTLs our LTLs are defined as EL scholars who have been in the EL program for 6 or more years without meeting exiting criteria. And so that criteria is a English language proficiency or higher on the access testing.
Bless you.
So the research says it takes about 5 to 7 years for that proficiency to be shown across the board.
All right, next is Rams Academies. Rams Academies, I guess we reshaped it 2 years ago, took effect 2 years ago. And what we wanted to do was make sure that we impacted more students than what we currently had in place. It came from a subcommittee and with a charge statement of increasing the instructional time in the tested areas of math, reading, and science. And what morphed or what developed from that particular committee was a revision of the Rams Academies. And so we started with the Math Academy, a Learning Academy, and a Literacy Academy. And with the goal of providing a Tier 2 instruction, Tier 2 support to students who qualified in math and also in reading. And then we use science text in the reading classes to provide that additional support in science. We changed the particular students that we targeted, and Ms. Bew will go into that a little bit more during her part of the presentation. But we wanted to be intentional about providing that Tier 2 support. When we looked at our achievement data compared to other middle schools within the metro and other areas of the state, we knew that we could do better, and we purposed ourselves to do better with the academies. Year one, we learned a lot. Now we're in year two of implementation, and I would say it's going well. Let's go to the next. Like I said, the goal was to increase the number of students who received that additional support. That is being accomplished, and we'll get to that slide in a bit. But we also wanted to look at how we provided instruction during that Tier 2 support for students. It couldn't just be more of the same in the sense of going to class, sitting and listening, receiving information for 46 minutes, but it had to be, the approach had to be uniquely different. At the same time, we're talking about middle school students, and middle school students, you're talking about another section of math or another section of literacy and reading. They're not just signing up for that additional piece of instruction. So teachers had to be creative in their approach. And we learned a lot in year one, like I said, and we put some different things in place for year two, and we'll explain that as we go through the presentation as well. All right. This is you.
It's me. So first of all, I'm just really excited to be able to have the opportunity to talk about academies. This is my 21st year teaching at Roseville area schools, and I will tell you for sure that I think this is the most profound thing that I've done here at the school. I see it has the biggest impact on our student population and changing student lives, which I think is wonderful. So I'm really excited about talking to you about academies, and if any time you want to come and see our students at the Roseville Area Middle School participate in these academies, we'd love to have you visit us. The kids would love to share all that they're learning because they're really proud of everything that they've done. So the selection criteria, there's a little slightly change. We look at like the MCA data. So in 7th grade, we do actually look at the 6th grade data and the 5th grade data as we're considering it. In 8th grade, we look at the 7th and the 6th. If they're below actually the 40th percentile on the most recent FAST assessment, we'll look at them. And then we're also just looking at recommendations from teachers. So before when we were looking at our labs, we used to call them math lab or reading lab, and now they're called academy with the change. We used to talk to students or work with students that were kind of on the bubble. And now we are really looking at all students who are needing support at RAMS. We've increased the number of students in academy. We now have 10 classes in academy. On one of the slides it said that literacy academy is not running, and that's true in its own perfect course, but we do have some students that are receiving just literacy instruction on an everyday basis as part of our Learning Academy. Our Learning Academy students switch every other week between math instruction and literacy instruction, so we do have some of those students that are receiving literacy support every week, just because that's how it worked in the class. Let's see. And before I forget, I'm a teacher, so I've got to kind of do stuff the way the teachers do. I have handouts, and so I'm sorry that it's not maybe the way that you normally would do it, but this is just the student survey, and so there's 145 responses, and I'm not expecting you to read them all, but I do want to have student voice, because as Dr. Brookins said, getting students excited about taking a class that's like going to give them extra support in literacy and math is not necessarily something that's a great sell, right? They know that they're lacking some of those skills. However, I want you to see that the kids themselves are saying how important the course is for them and how much they are enjoying being part of the course. They recognize the help that they're getting, and we do talk about that it being an optional course. It is Tier 2 intervention, so they can families can say they would prefer not to receive the intervention. But as that happens, the students are saying, no, we really want this intervention. And again, before, we didn't necessarily have students saying they wanted to be in the class, but I will have students approach me and say, how do I get into academy? Because they're hearing that it's something that helps students. So in fact, I was helping a student last week who's in my academy class. He brought a friend, and the friend's like, what class is this? How do I get in this class? And so, the word is getting out that it's a class that students want to be in, and it helps them feel engaged. Do you want to go to the next
slide?
Sorry.
This is me.
Yes, go ahead.
So once we came through that revised process of moving from labs to academies, like I said, we targeted a different caliber of student. Jill mentioned that in the past, we targeted students who were on the bubble, and when we say on the bubble, we're talking about students who were partially proficient on MCAs. And so we expanded that. And so we went after our most needy students who were in the red, and that's in the category of do not meets. And that's a different level of performance for students that we reached out to. And knowing that, like I said, we have to change our approach and be a little bit more intentional. As you look at the slide on the screen, with the previous academy structure, and I would say previous lab structure, we were only impacting approximately about 50 students per year in both math intervention and also literacy intervention. And what we also recognized with that particular structure was students who needed math support and literacy support, they had to choose one or the other. They were not allowed to do both. And so with the revised structure, now they can receive both. And so the way it could potentially look is for 2 weeks, they're getting math support in Jill's class, and in 2 more weeks, they could be in Bart Pierce's English class getting the literacy support that they need. And as you also see on the slides, the number of students that we impacted increased from approximately 50 per year to over 200 per year. And those numbers are interesting because we count the students who are in the Learning Academy twice because they're receiving the math support and also the literacy support. And so they're getting that double touch. And so when we look at our numbers, we say it's closer to 300 students, but like I said, some of those students are counted twice because they are receiving both of the interventions. And like I said, we have learned lessons from the first year of implementation to the second year of implementation. When we present the information to our students, the presentation is interesting, and I'm leaning more toward not giving students a particular choice because they're middle schoolers. And if you give them a choice of going to an academy class or going to that other option of elective classes, they're going to always choose elective classes. But we have a strong purpose in our mind that getting students ready for that next level. And that next level is high school, college, and career. And so we rather front load these skills now and make those tough choices for our students at this age so that they can be more successful at that next level of high school and also college and career. And like I said, we also got to make it fun. And so, once they're in the academy, Jill and her team, they do a remarkable job of connecting and developing relationships with students. And so what morphed in this process is the intention to focus on the mindset of the students and how they view school. How do you see yourself as a successful student at the middle school? And it's not just in math and also in literacy, but in all of your classes. And so Jill and her team, they developed a system for checking in with students on a weekly basis. They came up with forms to do so. And what we learned after that first year is, students appreciated it. They had a trusting adult that they had to check in with on a weekly basis, set goals, and actually meet those goals. I'm going to let her talk more about that. Let's go to the next slide.
So, again, here's the student. I have lots of handouts. So I have this. So these again are the student stats on Academy. You see the survey. There's 145 students that responded to that survey. And again, if you look at it, the general thought is like, hey, this is good. We did add the executive functioning skills, and Dr. Brookins is right. In our previous academy, kids could take literacy and math, but then it would take up both of their electives. And again, I really believe strongly in electives for students. We want them to have that well-rounded education. And so we recognized in that program previously that really wasn't happening. Students they were just getting like math, English, social studies, science. They might have band and gym, but then they weren't getting to work in the industrial tech or in the arts or in FACS. And so with the new academies now, they are able to do that. With that, still students are losing 3 electives. And so it is a conversation that we have with them about, do you understand, what'll happen here? And I have a conversation with the students, and I will tell you, when I talk to the students and explain what the class is, I am surprised at how many of the students are like, yes, I need that, because they recognize that school can be difficult. And it's not the first time for these students that it's hard, so it's a way for them to feel organized. So Dr. Brookins is right that we did create a form, and this to help us with our executive functioning skills. So task initiation, organization, working memory, self-regulation, those are the executive functioning skills that we're working with our students. And so a lot of these students need that kind of organization. It's not just them, it's a lot of our students, which is why we've started to do it in our STAR advisory program with our students as well. But we do have a forum. We set a goal every week because we know that setting goals, short-term goals, can have long-term impacts for students. We have them write in their planner, they check their grades, they organize their binder, they discuss with teachers, because that self-advocacy skill for these students who may not have connected to school, finding that the adults in the building are the allies, are a huge part for their future success in school. So they do a really good job of that. Then they have their trusted partner signature. We encourage it to be a parent, but sometimes there is an adult in the building that they are going over their grades with, and that has a big impact for them. And then they do have math or reading lessons that they're doing within the class. But every Friday we have a point of pride where we celebrate the little and the small accomplishments, because we know if we can celebrate the little things, they become larger things. So that's part of our executive functioning skills. That added social and emotional learning component, again, is part of that motivation. We have Motivation Mondays where we talk about just different things that encourage them, different short blurbs, or they create they find a motivational quote in their off Google, and they put it in their planner so that when they're struggling, they have something that they can look at and they're like, this is mine, this is my encouragement. And then, we are very intentional about greeting the students and finding out about them. Growth mindset, we use a lot of the work by Dr. Dweck on how to develop growth mindsets in students. We know how important that is. We've used the Brainology program in the past to help teach some of the more slight differences between, we help them establish growth versus fixed mindset thinking and how to move from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. Can you help me with this last part?
And so once we began to restructure our delivery of academies, we also recognize the need to make sure that teachers have the time to collaborate, discuss processes that they're experiencing. And so we put them on a POC together. And so we made sure that they're assigned to a common POC, collaborative team, and then they can look at student data, they can make changes in the delivery, they can review and analyze student growth. And it's like I say, it's working, but we want to be intentional with the schedule and that requirement that teachers have on their plate to do a POC. Well, our math academy is on a common POC, or on a POC together, and so they're working through those challenges together and growth opportunities as a POC team. I mean, they're out of slides. So,
they're out of slides.
So there are some slides that didn't make it to the presentation, but we wanted to get input from teachers who are teaching the academies. We also got some input from parents from the students who are in the academy. So
those are my next handouts. So again, we have we have a lot of teacher support for our academies. They work really hard with our students, because again, our students are the ones that will struggle. But they'll talk to you about how this particular group of students, grades matter to them. And I have never met a student in my 21 years that has ever said, man, I really hope I fail 7th grade, or I really want to fail 8th grade. They're coming in with the best they have, and our job is to support them and give them the skills they need in order to be successful. And so we have an outstanding group of teachers at Roseville Area Middle School who really care about students and work really hard with us, and the academies will come in on their prep hours and spend time to work with students on projects. They'll allow our students to come into their classrooms during the prep times to get some extra assistance and just help us with deadlines or breaking things down to make it more accessible for students. And then also our parents, as we've gone and we have 3 Title I family nights where we invite the whole family to come and we talk about different parts of academy and school. We just actually had one where we were helping families register for both 8th grade and for ROS, answering questions for them. And then also talking about reading strategies that they can use at the home, and provided books for them to talk with their students about reading, because critical reading is a big part of one of our SIP goals at RAMS. We worked with organization in the fall and talked to them about organization strategies. We're going to have another one in the spring, but then in in between those, new this year, we've started a parent academy where parents come in and work with us on just different ideas on how that they can support their child at home. And so that's just a parent and teacher opportunity, and we're just including them as much as we can. So again, it's always the dance of finding the best time for families, because for some families it's evening, sometimes it's afternoon, and honestly, I'll meet with them whenever they need to in order to support their kids.
So we took the charge statement from a couple of years ago and developed it and grew it, and it's having a huge impact on our students and also on us as educators. Any questions?
I just have a question. You commented that how your teaching is different. I mean, clearly you have the executive function part and the social emotional learning. Do you find how you present the information is different as well, or are those other elements really the defining differences?
Yeah, anytime, so a lot of the work that we're doing right now in mathematics is really individualized to the students because they are at such different spots. We do have some whole group instruction, but what I'm finding more is that kids just really want to have that time where there's someone that's talking to them about their specific math need. But we play games, we have individual activities that we can do to help them build some of those math skills, and they will work together too. One of my favorite opportunities was a student was really struggling with math, and these other kids had it, so they had her up at the smart board, and so she'd put up a problem, and then they would be helping her try to figure it out. So I mean, there is a real family atmosphere as it's a smaller group. It's larger than we used to have in our math labs. We used to have about 8 students in a class, and now we have about 15. But within there, because I think we do so much work with that social emotional to try to make them feel that they're part of a family, they really do work together. So that's been really useful.
Yep, I would say the pacing is a little bit different, and also the intensity around certain concepts.
Seems like this is moving kind of in the direction of AVID. Do you feel like AVID has inspired this, or I mean, it's like subject matter AVID?
Yeah, a lot of our students too would be first generation college students, and students that would be historically underrepresented in the college campuses. So we do talk about secondary options a lot with our students. We've talked with Mr. Sobczynski and connected him with some of the activities that the students can do. But yes, we talk often about grades and the need of organization in order to go on to this higher. And a lot of our students have gone on to join AVID. And so, yes, there aren't tons of AVID courses available at Rams right now. So we are looking for, and you'll see in some of the parent comments that they're like, is there something available like this at the high school level? And just because of time constraints and the way that the day is, it's not yet. But yes, there are definitely AVID connections to what we are doing in Academy.
Lots of parallels with AVID, and AVID as a system, it has impacted students in a positive light. We believe the academies will also do the same.
Yeah. So the original Academy idea 2 years ago, so we were talking about this in anticipation of it just 2 years ago. The idea was a student would come into it and then leave it when they achieved. Is that still part of this, and are they doing that?
Yes, and yes. Again, you have to remember some of our students have come in at does not meet. So before, a lot of the students were at partially proficient, and so there would be more exiting more quickly.
I see.
But we have some students that are in does not meet, and so it takes them longer. However, I feel that we are impacting those students in a stronger way because before, there wasn't a support for them. And so if they got overwhelmed by just the 7 classes and everything that happens, some of those students would turn off to school, and we're not seeing that now. We are seeing students that, again, like I said, are coming to me and saying, how do I get in here? And I think that is something they don't want to leave because, again, it is an elective course. It is a choice to receive this intervention. So if it was not a great program, kids wouldn't want to stay. But kids don't want to leave, and parents don't want their students to leave. And so I think that speaks to the teachers at the building who are working so hard, and then just the overall teachers in the building who have been able to talk to the students about the importance of the class and show them how it's helping them stay organized.
Okay, variation on Katie's question. So, outside of individualized instruction, okay, are there any learnings that are happening here that can be shared to the other math and English teachers in the building? I'm hearing the kids don't want to leave. Outstanding, okay, but without, I mean, I'm not saying that there's necessarily a secret sauce, but is there something that can be shared with the other teachers so that, you know, since there's a limit to the number of people, I'm assuming, that can be in this program?
Yeah, again, I would really compliment the teachers that are already in the building. They're already doing a lot of the things that we're doing, the differentiated instruction, the personalized attention as much as possible. Again, they only have 45 minutes and possibly a class of 35. So, but I've had two students go through the middle school, so I do understand, and I'm a big fan of Rams. I'm a big fan, so I'm on your side here. I'm just trying to understand, because sometimes when you get a different program, sure,
okay, when you get freedom to try something a little different, okay, other things come out. This is not against the great work that the teachers of Rams are doing. I'm just asking, is there anything else that may have come out of this that you look at and go, maybe we should bring all the math teachers and all the English teachers in and kind of see what they're doing. Maybe there's something. If there's not, fine. But I was just curious.
Yeah.
I think the biggest learning piece that evolved from year one is the focus on executive functioning skills. And Jill mentioned it in her presentation, but we're adding that piece through the use of the form in our STAR advisory, which impacts the entire school. And so we're in the process of including teachers utilizing this form, setting goals, identifying a trusting adult, going back to revisit at the end of the week, did you reach that goal across the board, school-wide. And so that will impact close to 1,000 students. The level of impact is going to be different in the academies than it will be, with every STAR student. But look at us at year 3 with that piece. We're going to be even stronger, and I'm confident you will see a bigger impact with that piece.
Just a real quick question. I know all the teachers are involved as staff in these academies. Is there any additional staff that it needs, or if it continues to grow? Is there any additional staffing levels or anything that you may need?
I guess I'm not sure how to answer that.
Because I guess is it staffed appropriately? Is there more?
That's a dangerous question. That's a very dangerous question.
Ask the principal.
But I would say it's always a need, because when you get the ratio of students to a teacher at this particular level, if you can duplicate that, absolutely. But does it fit into the current budget? Not at this particular point in time. But is there a need? Yes. Let's revisit how middle schools are made up, and elementary principals say let's revisit how elementary schools are made up. So, there's definitely a need. But is it a need that we can take action on at this particular point in time? Not at this time. But good question.
Asking the question a different way, is there a waiting list, or can we accommodate the number of students who would benefit from this service or requesting the service?
There is. Oh, sorry. Did you? Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were like, I want to take it. There are some students that we could service, but I think in general we have all of the students, because we're very careful right now with our levels that we are trying to find students that maybe we aren't having an intervention in another area. So like EL, special ed, AVID, right? All of those students. But there are some students that overlap. There are some students that are special ed that are in academy, EL in an academy, AVID in an academy. But we are trying to find that number. Again, what happens is we'll get new students in, right? And so there's always someone that might be there, and then just to identify them and get them in the class, and also to make it work within their schedule. sometimes when students have said that they would choose not to be in academy, it's because they would have to maybe miss a favorite elective. And you know, I understand that part too. So we just give them the best information that we can. But again, I think it's very few students that we're not being able to reach at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
No,
Is that fair?
That's very, very fair. I just want to make a closing remark that when you start a program or initiative, I hate to use the word initiative, but initiative, sometimes it's about having the right person, you know, in the forefront leading that work. And Jill has stepped up to the plate and done a remarkable job and taken what, like I said, what we came up with as a charge statement of adding additional time to really looking at the whole child and benefiting the whole child. So I applaud her work in this endeavor, and like I said, we had the right person leading the right charge, and it has made a huge difference. So my hat's off to you.
Thank you.
Very impressive work and very exciting to see that. Can I change back to AO?
Sure.
As you were talking about advanced option, I obviously haven't had a chance to read all the student comments. The students who used to be in what we had as honors programs and that, how challenged are they with the AO options? Are they finding the same level of challenge, or is it close? Or
I'm not sure if we have, I guess, measured, you know, the level of challenge from a student perspective. But I know the challenges, they are in place, and the rigor is there. I'm confident that there's always an opportunity to grow in that area. I've said it publicly, and I will say it publicly again, that I believe that our current AOs should be the norm, and we should revise those current AOs and take them to AO 2.0 or 2.5. But because student needs are constantly evolving, you know, and I believe with the infusion of technology, students come to us with different needs, and you know, when we create the current advanced options, you know, that was 3 years ago, and the needs of the students are 3 years further advanced. You know, they're just coming with different skill sets and strengths, and so you constantly have to be growing and evolving and changing and revising. So I think we're at that stage in the process of advanced options.
and do we have the capability and capacity to do this work you think would be beneficial?
Absolutely.
That's something that's what we've been working on this year. So, yes.
Great. Other questions? Well, thank you for that update on a number of different exciting work, and much appreciated all you do. And this the academies just sound amazing. It's fun to see it go so well off the ground. Thank you. Next, we go to action items. And the first action item we have is a resolution approving the implementation of an adult competency-based program. And we have Karen Shaw here at the table to help us understand.
Good evening. As you remember, we've talked about our competency-based diploma program in a work session. We also talked about it last time at the school board session. And we had the opportunity to work with our council to figure out the best way of moving this forward. And so in front of you tonight, you will see a resolution that will talk about us moving forward in the competency-based diploma. That will be our first action. Down the road, I will bring back to you later, or our team will bring back to you later, a school board policy. So right now, within our policy, we talk about graduation credits for our high school program. We have used a lot of those same bases for our diploma for our ABE program, but we haven't really ever pulled it out and been specific about it. And so we would be bringing back a policy to you that would talk about how in our adult basic education program we are offering a couple different options to receive adult diploma. We don't absolutely have to have a policy put in place to do it, but it seemed like it would make some sense because this is something that we're believing in, and this is something that we hold dear to us and make sure that our students get a good diploma from those various schools. Any questions, or do we need to go back and revisit anything?
I'd just actually like to ask, because I was in the position of putting together the report on the study session 2 weeks ago, and there were questions that came up in my mind as I was thinking back over that, and so I just want some clarification on where the state is. The state now, so my understanding is, and this way you'll be able to correct me, is that the state has been working on this but has not it hasn't brought it into focus in the same way that we're bringing into focus here at Roosevelt.
Yeah, let me state it a little bit differently.
Please do.
Okay, so Minnesota state law that allows us to operate adult basic education, which is the 124D.62, talks about being able to offer a diploma to adults to show that their competency in being able to receive a diploma. So all the words in that, in point 8 of it, really drives the work that we're doing right now to prove that they have it. The point 9 is a new addition to the law that came, I think, about 2 years ago. Was that about right? Maybe
2013.
Yeah, 2013. Okay. Which started talking about a competency-based diploma. And so we had a work study group with the state that was really going down this more, what we maybe call true to our thoughts about a competency-based. They kind of took a little road shift, and it's not so much competency-based as the original proposal. So Alex and we have a team of individuals who are going, is it monthly almost?
Yeah, monthly.
To still sit on that task force and be part of it and to see how it's going, because that down the road could end up even being a third diploma that might meet some of our students' needs that are currently not being met by what we have going on right now. The competency-based diploma that we're asking you to approve here is really focused at a specific group of individuals, and it's more towards our career readiness, individuals that would go right out, would leave us, go right out into a work setting, and then receive some additional education at that work setting to go down that road. So in essence, right now, there's probably almost 3 options that would be available to our students. It will probably be another year before we even consider the other option that the state is offering right now, because we need to do more learning on it ourselves to be able to provide a good program.
Good. Thank you. That clarifies things.
Other questions or comments? Acting Clerk, would you
Acting
care to
Clerk.
read the resolution?
Thank you. I would like to introduce the following resolution, and I move its adoption. Resolution approving the implementation of an adult competency-based program. Whereas the school district currently has an adult basic education program under Minnesota Statutes 124D.52, Subdivision 8, and whereas the school district desires to expand their programming options to include an adult competency-based program aimed at career readiness and pathway work, from which Roseville area schools would issue a diploma. And whereas the school board has been provided information regarding the program components that satisfy the components, knowledge, and skills required under Minnesota Statute 124D.52 for an adult basic education program. Now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District Number 623, Roseville Area Schools, hereby approves the implementation of an adult competency-based program offered at the Roseville Adult Learning Center. And it does need to be seconded.
Second.
Okay, this needs to be a roll call vote since it's a resolution.
Director Azer.
Aye.
Director Shaw.
Aye.
Director Goggins.
Aye.
Director Johnson.
Aye.
Director Anderson votes aye.
Okay. So we have approved the resolution this evening.
Thank you very much. We'll be excited to share our learnings as we go down the road, and later on we will bring you back a policy around graduation for our adult area learning center.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
We move to our second action item this evening, which is the 2018-2019 budget revisions. And and we have Sherry Thompson here this
Good evening again. So yes, we have just completed our mid-year budget revision for the 2018-2019 school year. The preliminary budget was developed last spring and adopted by the board at the end of June, prior to the start of the fiscal year. You know, when we put together the preliminary budget, we make a lot of assumptions, both regarding revenue and expenses. Now we're midway through the year, so we know much more about our enrollment and our actual staffing on the expenditure side. So we do the mid-year revisions. So we talked about this a little bit at the study session. So I just want to highlight by fund some of those changes in the budget. Looking at the summary sheet that you have in your packet, the biggest fund that we have, of course, in the school district is the general fund. And the biggest fund within the general fund is the unassigned fund balance. That's where the majority of our day-to-day operating expenses occur, those that aren't mandated by statute. So in looking at our preliminary, or actually our revised revenue under the unassigned, we are projecting that the unassigned revenue will be $90.6 million. That's about $308,000 more than higher than what was projected last spring. At the same time, and when we have revisited our revenues appear to be about $678,000 higher than what was originally budgeted. Some of the factors on the revenue side, our enrollment in K-12 is down from what we had originally projected. It's down about 30 students from what we projected last February. We don't see this as a trend. We did graduate a large class last year, so we're keeping an eye on that. We think it's just a temporary dip. So our general, but we also have School Readiness Plus students. That's a pre-K program, so that has added some additional revenue. So our general education revenue, the net of that is about $116,000 increase. We also had some carryover dollars from some of our title programs, so that is generating about an additional $300,000. But at the same time, we're seeing a reduction in our federal flow-through dollars of about $100,000. So that's the highlight of how we come up with that increased revenue of about $308,000. On the expense side, on the unassigned, as I mentioned, we're looking at an increase of about $678,000. Some of that includes increases in professional development and assessment costs of about $70,000. We're seeing an increase in buildings and grounds because we've had to reclassify some of our nutrition services expenses, some of the custodial costs, and then also increased labor costs. That's having an impact of about $200,000. We also revisited and looked at our professional services, our contracted services, and we have had to increase that cost by about $100,000 this year. And the other two items is we've added some additional student supports, and that totals about $125,000. And then, just kind of looking at our experience, we have had more leaves this year, whether medical leaves for various reasons. So that cost is about $125,000 higher than what we had originally budgeted. So overall, we are looking at a surplus in the unassigned, a surplus of about $173,000, which would bring that unassigned fund balance up to $2,398,000. Again, this is a shift because we had previously projected a surplus of about $537,000. So it's about $370,000 less than what was in the projected. So we will continue to work towards, as we move forward then on the next budget year, in working towards that 3% goal on the unassigned fund balance. Looking at the restricted accounts, I won't go through each one of these. Probably the biggest change, a lot of these funds are dollars that flow in and flow out. Again, they're typically tied to some type of mandate through the legislature. The one area that we are seeing an increase is in our operating capital. That's going up about $127,000 on the revenue side, and the expenditures will increase about $26,000. So overall, looking at our total general fund, we are looking at about $438,000 in increased revenues over what was originally budgeted, and our expenditures are about $707,000 higher than originally budgeted. So overall, we're looking at a total fund balance of about $4,267,000 at the end of the year. Then a couple of other areas that I want to highlight. We also have revised some of our other funds. The first one being food service or nutrition services. Down below, we have increased our revenue projection there by about $358,000. Some of that is due to what we are estimating as far as increased participation. And really just kind of when we looked at our final costs for last year, it can vary from year to year. So looking at our experience from last year, we've increased that cost. Then moving over to the expenditure side, we will also see an increase in our labor costs, food, and we have some additional equipment budgeted in here. So we are estimating that our expenditures will actually, that number is listed wrong. That should be, our revenues will actually increase or be about $31,000. That should not be a negative number there as far as the, that should be a surplus and not a deficit. But if you look to the right, we are estimating that, yes, that fund balance will increase from $463,000 to about $495,000. So that should be a positive number of $31,352.
So are those two numbers reversed? Because you have it, the expenses being greater than the variance on the...
Those are just the changes from the original. So if you look at the revised revenue of $4,713,000 and the revised expenditures of $4,682,000. That's actually a surplus rather than a deficit. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Then looking at our community service fund in community education, we are estimating that our revenues will increase by about $486,000 for a total of $8,460,000 approximately. On the revenues, we're seeing an increase in revenues in our Friendship Connection or school-age child care program of about $45,000. We're also anticipating an increase in the suburban Ramsey County through the collaborative. Additional funding there of about $130,000. And then also grants and gifts of about $80,000. Moving to the right then and looking at the expenditure side, we are anticipating an increase there of about $390,000 over the preliminary budget. We have increased security costs. We've added security costs at Fairview. Some of that is absorbed by the general fund, and some of it is also absorbed by community services. So there's about $38,000 that's being absorbed by community education. We also have an increase in ABE, some investments that are being made in that program. The increase in expenses in ABE is about $75,000. And then I had mentioned on the with the Suburban Ramsey County Collaborative, while the revenues are increasing, the expenditures increase as well. So we are looking then at community service. We're anticipating a fund balance there, drawing that fund balance down to about $695,000. Other funds, there aren't a lot of changes in the other funds. The only other one that I want to point out is the OPEB debt fund. So that's where we have the bonds for the post-employment benefits. And in the preliminary budget originally, what we didn't include is last year in October of 17, prior to the referendum, we had done an advanced refunding on our OPEB bonds, the original ones from 2009, because the interest rates were so low. So that those funds, while we are not the custodian of those have been in escrow. So we have a third-party financial organization that has those. We have been earning some interest on those because we can't pay those off until February 1st of 2019. So that change that you see there, as far as expenditures increasing from $744,000 to $18.5 million, that reflects the payoff of those bonds from 2009. So that those dollars were there. We received those funds last year, and those funds will flow out. So when we see that fund balance of about $275,000, that's what's typically in that fund. Just enough to cover the bond payments and interest. So overall, all funds combined, we are looking at revised revenues of about $137,410,000, which is an increase of about $1.3 million. Looking at our expenditures, we're looking at increasing the expenditures by $19.3 million. Again, the majority of that is the payoff of those bonds from 2009. And then we are estimating that we will end the year with a total, all funds combined, fund balance of $119,900,000. And again, I will point out there, of course, that includes all of our construction funds, which is the majority of that. So that's what I have for the revised budget.
Any questions or comments?
Chair Goggins, I recommend that the revised 2018-2019 budget be approved as presented.
Is there a second?
Seconded?
Any further discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay. Then we keep Sherry Thompson here and do the 2019-2020 budget parameters and timeline.
Yes, thank you. So in your packet, you have a couple of documents. The first being the general fund, the parameters for the 2019-2020 budget, and then you have a one-page document which is a summary of the timeline. So we issue this annually as far as for our annual budget process. Looking at our parameters, of course we will be entering a new biennium this year. So we do make some assumptions about what we think the legislature may do. Reminding again, of course the board does have strives to maintain a minimum unassigned general fund balance of 3% of the annual budget. What we have included in here is that we are working to present with the board with a budget that demonstrates progress in reaching that minimum unassigned fund balance. Right now, we're estimating that we'll be at about 2.4%. So we have some work to do there. Looking at our revenue parameters. We are making, at least for now, again, the legislature is just beginning their work. So we have built in a 2% increase in the basic funding formula, or $126 per pupil. Also, we are fortunate to have an operating referendum that our voters approved. Currently, we also have an inflationary factor in there. The inflationary factor for next year, that's already been calculated. That is 2.24%, or about $36 per pupil unit. So that will increase to $1,654 or $52 rather. And then also all of our levy revenue is based on the 2018 paid 2019-2020 certified levy, and that's the levy that you approved back in December. We are anticipating, we'll continue to monitor our enrollment, but we are anticipating that our enrollment will increase slightly for next year. Looking at our expenditure budget, we are focusing our resources on equity and student achievement. We will make adjustments to our staffing that aligns with our enrollment projections and our class sizes. And we are building in estimated salary settlements for the next year. Federal programs, typically, we receive allocations there, so we don't spend any more in our federal programs than we receive. We have some other costs assumptions that we build in regarding utilities, etc. So that covers pretty much the budget parameters. We list a few things there as far as where we solicit community input, staff input, and how we report back to the board. And then just to piggyback on that is the budget planning timeline. And actually the budget planning, it's a living document. We're always adjusting and looking at the budget. And it starts with you approving the current year budget last June, and then the levy cycle that we completed in December, mid-year revisions, and then developing the budget for the next year. So you do have a copy of that timeline also. I will also take the opportunity to say we will provide budget updates throughout the process, and we also have a public budget hearing that's held here in the boardroom on May 28th of 2019. And that's at 6 o'clock. And that occurs prior to the board's formal adoption of the 2019-2020 budget on June 25th.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a comment. This is not going to sound very good, and I guess I don't care. I think that this is an awful lot of budget updates to the school board, and every time there's a budget update, it takes a long time. And I don't think personally that if there's something that we need to hear about, I think that it's important that we hear a budget update, but to spend a half an hour every board meeting once a month, at least a half an hour on budget update, I'm not sure if that's the best use of our time.
Maybe that's worthy of a study session in terms of how we use our time.
Yeah, I'm going to push back just a little bit here. I don't think it is every month. I think it's. I mean, you're seeing a lot of things there, but
It is on here. It's every month.
Well, we haven't been doing every month as far as I remember.
So right now, because we may need to make some adjustments for next year, right? So we have it slated for every month. So if there are things, you're correct. If there are things we need to bring to you, and it may not even be a full budget update, it may be updates on enrollment, for instance, or changes to parameters. It won't be a half an hour update.
And I meant that with all
No,
respect.
I do. I totally understand that. It's really just kind of building it in, and even when we put our agendas together, and Superintendent Sicoli can speak to this, we kind of, schedule that. They're just like our construction updates right now. And if we don't have items that we have to report, then we won't bring that to you.
I just wasn't sure too, and this might be a technical question.
Mhm.
If we approve a timeline as an action, then we have to live up to the timeline.
If we approve that we have potential budget updates at these time, is that in fact a commitment that we will have the budget updates? Anybody able to comment on that one?
That's a good question. I never thought of it that way.
I haven't either. That is
Yeah,
a good
and-
point.
and, well, I would-
but
you know,
this
I-
is similar to what we have done in the past.
We've done in the past.
Just on the
and,
timeline.
You know, in a lot of these budget updates, there'll be, Sherry will come up and there'll be something there and it won't last 5 minutes. And it seems to me that it's one of our primary responsibilities is oversight. So on this budget, now I say that, but of course, this won't sound very good. A lot of the time, it's just as washing over us because of its complexity and also because of the constraints involved. There are a huge number of constraints. It's not like we can really do anything. But I do believe that it's good for us to be hearing it on a regular basis. And I haven't felt like it's been too much. Now, tonight,
I know.
we're almost identical to what we had 2 weeks ago. And that maybe is not necessary. But in fact, it
Right.
was identical.
And I
Yes.
think that's
Yeah.
to my point.
Yeah, okay, that is certainly to your point, and that's and I agree with that. But I
That's
think
also, well, no, I was going to say, I'm kind of in your line of thinking, it may be worth a study session dive into of process or procedure. Is it every month? Is it shortened? Let's also remember there's also another important audience who is watching us, is listening, that we are going through this in the name of transparency, fiscal transparency. That I know what you're saying. I get it. But I don't know where else to finish with that. But I feel like there is an important audience
And
as
we're
a group.
and in fairness,
that.
we're hearing this with something in front of us, and the viewing audience of thousands does not have.
well, they've got access to it.
They do,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
do, but let's be clear, if
Yeah.
I was watching a school board meeting, I'd be like, click.
You wouldn't watch through this.
I wouldn't. Perhaps that's just an Aaron Azer problem, but it's something to
No,
consider.
that's-
I'll be talking
Context,
later
yes.
about our financial advisory committee you might want to participate in.
Okay. Dr. Sicoli, your comment?
So I think, in reference to 2 weeks ago, and if that was at a study session.
Yes, that was a study
So,
session.
if it is
not-
going to be the same material, I mean, we really probably should look at, obviously it needs to be approved at a regular meeting, but do we really need to spend that time at a study session going over it if it's going to be the same thing? Maybe, maybe not. I think back to the question about the timeline, I guess the way I would interpret this, there are some board approval dates on here that are very important. Now, obviously, in June, you have to approve the budget. We want to approve in time for staffing allocations. So to me, those parts of this, are very important. But the ones that are reports, if there aren't updates that are really significant changes, they don't have to be longer, they don't need to happen at all. So even though you've improved the timeline, I interpret it as you don't have to do every single report that's on that timeline. Others may interpret it differently.
Fair enough.
Well, how about if, since we are approving this, we define it as updates are identified when there is new material, that we will have an update. If there is nothing new at the dates that specify an update, we will not have an update. Does that work for everybody?
Works for me.
Okay. I
And we'll
do
modify
like
it.
that we got the budget parameters 2 weeks ago, so we had a chance to think about it. I would have difficulty approving the budget parameters the same day I got them because sometimes we have to have some further conversation and discussion around them. So to me, there is some benefit but there is some redundancy, there's no question. But it's just such an important element. I don't know what others people's feel about that.
And we provide plenty of AV materials for the adopted or proposed budget. So I appreciate what you're saying too, as far as the viewing audience. so that we provide that
They can
when
go on
you're
the
actually
website.
taking action on it, when we do the revisions.
So listen to that, viewing audience.
Well, and I'll add on to that, in all of the communities. We're
Yes.
not excluding any communities in this
All
process.
communities, yes.
All
Okay.
communities.
Fair, excellent.
Yeah.
Okay. Good point, good discussion. Any further discussion or comments? I look for a motion to...
Oh, I move that the school board approve the 2019-2020 budget parameters and timeline.
I'll second.
Okay. Any further comments? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. Next, we have our study session report with Director Shaw.
How about that? Okay, we had a study session back on the 8th of January. Let's see, where are my notes? Where are my notes? Lost my notes. So here they are. There was a 41-page packet that we worked our way through. It was a long but interesting study session. It was actually very good. And I will not touch on most of it because a lot of it has come back in this meeting and has been covered in some detail. But the first part of it was concerning dyslexia. We had Chris Bretz, Alicia Mobley, Jake van der Linde here, and we talked about, so what's happened is that the state has hired into the Minnesota, by statute, into the Minnesota Department of Education, a dyslexia specialist. There's now a dyslexia specialist there, and their work has been to encourage school districts to look at this. There was a bill in the legislature last year to have mandatory screening for dyslexia in elementary school, but that didn't pass. But still, this sort of thing is coming, and we're having to look at it. But the district does not diagnose dyslexia, and therefore is looking at dyslexia, what Jake talked about as dyslexia-like symptoms or dyslexia-like behavior. What was it? Dyslexic tendencies is what he said, and since dyslexia is so common, affecting maybe 20% of our students, the interventions that we have in place for reading problems are probably addressing dyslexic tendencies already, and so we had a look at those in the FAST and the press interventions, and so it was very very informative. Then we talked about the competency-based diploma at some length, but we've just talked about it at some length. We talked about the budget parameters and timeline at some length, and we've just talked about it again at some length. And we talked about the budget. We had the budget update and worked through the numbers in some detail. And so that was the sort of central part of the meeting. And then the last item was to talk about a finance advisory committee, which the district would like to establish of community members to look at various aspects of the budget and to advise the administration and the board. So its commission would be to understand school district finances in order to evaluate and make recommendations to the district administration, and also to study and make recommendations regarding specific financial issues identified by the board and the administration. And so I believe that's already been announced. It's out there, and is that going to be in 623 today?
Yes.
All right.
Which
So
I don't know if it's been mailed. No, not
I
yet.
haven't
Yes,
seen mine.
It is in. It'll be in the
okay,
next
so
623
it's in
days.
process. So that's something that will be an opportunity for.
I think that's February.
Finance-minded community members who are interested in perhaps supporting the district they'll be interested in that. And I think that's it.
Good. Thank you, Frank. Are there any board reports this evening?
Yeah. I went to the Falcon Heights PTA meeting, and Dr. Sicoli was there to give them a budget update. And also an update on the facilities, not budget. And also they're excited because they have book sales and Family Fun Night, which is their big fundraiser, the stuff sale, which is a large garage sale that they have that people from all over the community participate in, field trips, etc. So it's a great year at Falcon Heights, and everybody seems happy. I also brought some stuff that I thought you might be interested in from my 916 meeting. I always go and I get these pamphlets and I always forget them, and this time I made sure that I brought them. So it's just a bunch of information. This is kind of shows you what some of their classrooms look like, education mental health classrooms, so it's a brochure that you might want to look at. Here's one that tells us all the students that we have from Roseville that are enrolled in 916, and then the district-wide enrollment, and I've literally had this sitting on my desk several times, but this is one I actually remembered. I'm so happy. This tells us how intermediate school districts are funded and some more information in case you would like to look at it. Here's their legislative priorities, which are very aligned with ours, but of course with a special ed lens, because it's a school where they have a lot of students that have special needs. So that was a big thing that we got all these interesting brochures. Also, the Foundation Gala for 916 is on February 22nd. The proceeds from this gala support the purchase of science equipment at their learning centers. So if anybody's interested in that, they have tickets. Apparently, it's a wonderful event. At 916, they do a lot to inform and teach their teachers and their community, because it is such a specialized place. They have level 4 programs there, autism programs. They also have an alternative high school and other things. So they really have done a great job of educating their staff so that they understand a lot of the procedures surrounding equity and how to work with their students. So they have a little equity resource library that they've put together. So if you ever have a question, you can type it in and you can get some information, and it's amazing, and it's for their staff. So that was something I thought was pretty neat. Otherwise, a lot of the other things we talked about were election of board officers and the things that we do here. So, yeah, that's my report. Oh, also, I had the privilege of going to the MLK breakfast yesterday morning at the Armory, and it was fascinating. And Don Lemon was there, and he spoke, and he was very moving, and he talked about how when he was a young man at college, he was discouraged to go into journalism because of who he was. And he said, but I didn't listen, and I went and I did it anyway. And I thought that was really remarkable, and it really made me think about all of our students and how we have to find the wonder in all of them. And he concluded with a quote from Mark Twain, and I might butcher it a little bit, but it completely has brought me to my core. And the quote is, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. And I've been thinking about that a lot, and just something I wanted to share with you, because maybe now it'll kind of mess with you like it's been messing with me, because I've really been thinking about that a lot. So that's my report.
Very powerful quote. Thank you. Todd or Curtis, do you have anything you'd like to
I've got a
add?
couple. Yeah. Last week we had a meeting of the District Curriculum Advisory Committee, and one of the highlights from the evening is we went over the college and career readiness report that the board went through a couple months back. We had small discussion groups about going over the report. And then some fascinating highlights. There's some good things coming down the pike. Curriculum Director Chris Bretz and Communications Director Carrie Ardito introduced us to a really cool program coming around. It's called Roseville Reads. It's going to be short video clips, short video segments on reading tips for kids. And so we saw the initial segment, Chris, just a quick 1-minute tip for maybe students who are struggling or to find interest in a certain novel or whatever. But it's going to really start being rolled out. I think they're going to ask various educators, administrators, staff, possibly school board members, I don't know, but just to star in this little video segment. I think it's going to be on the website. Probably it'll be introduced in the 623 today, but it just sounded fascinating, and they just kind of introduced it to us. DCAC. Then kind of along with that, Carrie and Jake also introduced, there's going to be a new webpage that provides resources for pre-K through 6th grade families called the Roseville Learning Resources. So I think there's going to be more information about that, kind of a one-site place to go to. So that was really interesting. Then just a quick highlight, some of you know that the school district's been working really hard on the elementary program review committee. There are some recommendations that are coming forward, recommendations around, daily instructional schedules, district-wide balance specialist schedules. And I thought it was important to mention that kind of the timeline, where we're going from here. There's going to be continued conversations with elementary principals. District administration is going to continue to discuss. It's going to be presented to elementary staff on February 8th. These recommendations are going to be coming to DCAC on February 11th. And then the next night, they are coming to the school board for our full discussion. So it's just kind of, there are recommendations out there. There's still discussions, but they're going to be rolled out over the next few weeks.
So is that in a study session form then? The 12th of February?
I believe.
Yes,
I think so.
Yeah,
Yep,
okay.
Yep.
Yeah,
Not certain.
great. Yeah, we're not being asked to
I don't
rubber
believe
stamp
so,
it.
no.
That's it. I'll read this
Thank
later.
you, Todd.
Cool.
Do you
Okay, yeah, I have a few things. First of all, I'd like to thank the Roseville League of Women Voters. Chair Goggins and I attended their conversations with constituents. It's an opportunity for local mayors, county commissioners, and school board members to come together and basically have the public come and talk to us, ask us questions, and for us to share what we know. It was a great opportunity. It was my first time being able to do that, so very, very happy to do that. Love to do more of that. Losing my place. Oh, of course. How did I miss this? Also, let's see. No, you weren't there. Okay, Chair Goggins and I both attended the Minnesota School Board Association annual conference and the Minnesota School Board of Color meeting, which is an annual event, and so it was my second time attending that. So much stuff to learn, and Dr. Scully was there for the luncheon, so that was very cool. Learned a lot. Always great to meet with other administrators and school board members, compare notes, and Roseville was well represented in a number of different activities. Chair Goggins, I'm sure, is going to go into some of that. Then finally, I was able to go to attend the Governor's Council Martin Luther King Day celebration at the Ordway. Outside of it being Martin Luther King's birthday, this had special a special time for me because Catherine Johnson Coleman was sorry, did I get it? Catherine, I think I got that wrong. Catherine Coleman Johnson was there. If you saw the movie Hidden Figures, she was one of the women that is in the story. She is an educator, 100 years old, educator, mathematician, one of the people responsible for getting John Glenn orbiting the planet. So she unfortunately wasn't there because, in her words, 7 degrees seemed to be very, very cold. I understand. I couldn't be mad. She did send her daughters, and so it was really great to see them and talk to them. So that's all I have.
Okay. Last week there were a lot of really fun things going around in the district that I got to participate in. I got to go to the Reimagine Minnesota presentation, which was around increasing the hiring and retention of staff of color. And Roseville area schools shared their Grow Their Own program that they have at the high school, which is very exciting, and exciting to hear about the developments there. Then on Tuesday, I got to attend the Avid Showcase, as we're a demonstration site at the middle school and high school on Avid. And the showcase is an opportunity for, I think it was 45 different individuals from different districts around the state to come and participate for the day, learning about the program and what we've learned along the way, or what works, etc. And they really used a kind of a domain highlights. They talked about the systems, the culture, the leadership, and the instructions, the four key elements around the AVID program. And it was really neat to see how many students were involved in the process and how eloquent they were in expressing their thoughts. It was really a pleasure to be part of that. And then I got to attend the MSBA conference, and Mike Boguszewski, Curtis Aldo, and I were there, and Dr. Sicoli. At that, I participated in a very small role in one of the presentations, but our high school, we had our high school principal, Principal Hester, we had two teachers, Carly Miller and Mary Hanela, and two students who spoke and talked about the absent narrative work that's being done. And it was really impressive to hear, and some great discussion at the end, some great questions from folks. And I wanted to point out to you, if you turn to page 7, what you'll see is in the packet that I sent out, if you can, Michelle, if you could pass that back to Curtis, please. On page 7, what you'll find is a student's perspective. They shared some things that they thought were going really well in Roseville schools, and they shared some improvements that they would like to see at the high school. And I just wanted to make sure that you as board members had an opportunity to see that student input. And it was just really exciting for me to see the kind of work that's been happening at the high school, and hear from the students their perspectives and what they were seeing. It was just really powerful. And so that was wonderful to have a chance to attend. The other thing that I wanted to mention is I did get to my liaison school, Emmett Williams, for a tour and a lunch last week. Got to eat the local lunch. It was fun to see, and it was some really fantastic food, and it's a neat opportunity and program that they're doing. The last thing I wanted to report on is around, and this was more just informational for board members, I would really like to attend NSB this year, but with the budgetary situation, etc., I don't want the school district to pay for it, so I will be personally funding a trip to NSB. So that moves us to the superintendent's report.
Thank you. I'd like to touch on a few things. I think construction and facilities planning, I'm pleased with the way it's progressing. In terms of construction, if you look at a few sites, such as across the street at Roseberry High School, you can see how quickly the steel of that science wing went up. But then also planning. We had a meeting this morning, and the 3 elementary schools are progressing on the design for their plans, or are just getting started really with the site team, so that's exciting to see some of that. So I again want to thank the community for, in November of 17, to vote to give us the funds to improve our schools and to get additional space that we need. Recently, I participated on the interview team for first round interviews for the executive director for Equity Alliance and Equity Alliance Minnesota. And I was impressed with the candidates, and I want to congratulate Sebastian Witherspoon, who was selected, and I also want to thank Director Boguszewski, because as our representative on the Equity Alliance Board, he of course participated in interviewing in both rounds, and of course was part of the body that made the decision to hire Mr. Witherspoon. And then Chair Goggins mentioned the January 14th Reimagine Minnesota strategy session. I was proud of our staff who presented there, some of whom are in the room, and I want to also thank Dr. Lake for coordinating that, organizing that presentation. The next Reimagine Minnesota strategy session is on February 4th, and it will be on create and sustain continuous and consistent shared understanding of equity and a high level of skill application for leaders at all levels. And then that'll be followed up April 15th, with another session that will focus either on adult behaviors or cultural competence. I find those sessions valuable. We get to learn what other districts are doing. It gives us ideas of things we could look at, so I look forward to these future sessions. And that's the end of my report.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. The next agenda item we have is a closed session, and the board will enter into a closed session, and before the meeting is adjourned, I hereby entertain a motion to enter into a closed session for preliminary consideration of allegations against an individual subject to board authority. Closure is required under the Open Meeting Law, Minnesota Statute, Section 13D.05, Subdivision 2B.
So moved?
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Okay. So I officially adjourn the meeting, and we will move to a closed session. Good evening. I bring back to order the regular school board meeting for January 22nd, 2019. We have completed the closed session for Minnesota Statute, Section 13D.05, Subdivision 2B, which means we've completed the agenda before us, and I adjourn the meeting.